So let me tell you a little bit about the New Jersey Family Engagement Hub. We are a centralized information hub for educators, families, and community partners. We work with these constituencies to create collaborations and build bridges on all things family engagement. We do this by providing tools and strategies such as our in-person workshops and our online virtual offerings. We also work with these constituencies to empower our youth. We need to know what our youth need so that they continue to be successful both in school and out of school.
Okay, thank you. We are going to get started with our webinar for today, which is Learning Through Challenge, Teaching Growth Mindset in Real Life. So we'd love to hear a little bit about you. If you would not mind introducing yourself, you can share where you're zooming in from, how old are your students if you're an educator, or your children if you're a parent, and what is your role that you're calling in from today? Are you calling in as a parent? Are you calling in as an educator? Maybe you're actually calling in as both. And however you're coming today, we're happy to have you. So if you wouldn't mind just putting your information into the chat, we'd love to know a little bit more about you. And I also just want to mention that I know sometimes we are on cell phones and it's hard to access the chat, so no worries if you're not able to. But if you are, yeah, we'd love to know who you are. Okay, thank you so much for writing in. Parent of special needs, third grader in Mercer County, New Jersey. Thank you for coming today. We have a school leader on Pacific Northwest. Fantastic. And I'm going to keep moving forward with our presentation, but we would still love to know who you are. So if you wouldn't mind entering your info into the chat, please keep going along. So I'm going to introduce myself, and then I'm going to also introduce my colleague who's joining me today. My name is Erica Brenton. I have been in education for over 2 decades now. I started my career off as a New York City public school teacher, and I became very invested in social emotional learning, which is all things emotional intelligence, self-awareness, self-control, executive functioning skills. And I became so interested in it that I decided I wanted to leave the classroom and do that full time. So now I am a social emotional learning specialist where I work with parents and educators to instill these practices and values into their classrooms and homes. I live in Montclair, New Jersey, and I have 2 children. One is in elementary school, third grader, and one is in middle school, seventh grader. So this work is interesting to me from a professional perspective, but also hits home very closely from a personal perspective. I just wanted to, before I introduce my colleague, Erin, I just wanted to look in the chat. Looks like some other folks are writing in. We have a parent of 2 kids in New Jersey, fantastic special education teacher, parent of 10-year-old, okay, with inattentive ADHD, ODD, tuning in from New Jersey. So lots of New Jersey parents, educators, so glad to have you here today. I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Erin, who's going to introduce herself. Erin?
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Erica. I too am an educator. I've been in the world of education for over 20 years. My education journey started in higher ed. I was in upper residency as well as counseling mentorship first year students in the admission world in the college setting. I was able to find my razzle dazzle during that time and really wanted to hone in on early childhood education. So going back to school, getting my early childhood degree from BU, and finding my place and space in elementary education. I did most of my learning and training in Cambridge Public School systems. And then I got called to leadership. And so that's where I am in the here and now. Now we live and work in the PNW, Seattle to be exact, where I am with my husband and my 2 children. We have a 19-month-old child, and we also have a 5.5-year-old child. The 5.5-year-old is in the process of going through her neuropsych evaluation. ADHD and ODD are two of the diagnoses that we're learning more about her so we can meet her in her brain where she is. And so I really am excited to share what we have. Part of our wheelhouse and tools, because I think it is, as it seems, we have a really great panel of attendees to engage with today. And if I'm not in education, I am definitely cooking, traveling, reading, and spending time with my family.
All right. Thanks, Erin. And we'll hear from Erin in a little bit. I wanted to share with you our agenda for today. So today's session is all about growth mindset. So we're going to talk about what is this growth mindset? Why does it matter for our children? What does it look like in real kids? And what can we as the adults in our children's lives do about it? So this session is meant to be very interactive. We have lots of questions. We'll be sharing a lot of information as well, but if you're able to share some of the answers and some of your thoughts and ideas in the chat, we know that there's lots of information and knowledge and wisdom in this room, and we'd love to hear from you. So I want you to think about a time that your child struggled. And it could be, if you're an educator, maybe pick one individual child that you're focused on. I want you to think about, how did you respond? So I'm going to give an example, and if you wouldn't mind, while I'm giving my example, of putting your answers into the chat, we'd love to know, how did you respond when the last time or some time that your child recently struggled? So I have a 9-year-old, and he sometimes, gives up pretty easily with his homework or when he thinks something is too hard. And when I wrote this question, I thought, okay, well, how am I going to answer this question? And the answer is that I respond pretty quickly by offering help. And I don't think necessarily it's the greatest response to him. I know that there's other ways to go about supporting him when he's struggling, but that's been my approach with him. So thinking about a time that your child struggled, how did you respond? And you can put those answers into the chat box. And it could be either, what words did you use, or maybe what actions you took. So for example, my action would be, I offered help. So we'll hold the chat open for another 30 seconds or so. Minute. Okay, I asked what was wrong. That's a nice way of thinking about supporting a child. Asking what happened versus what's wrong. Interesting, because I normally get different answers. So instead of saying what's wrong, what happened? Offering support by reading math problems aloud and writing part of their answers. Okay, so really gradually supporting them, not doing all the work for them, but doing, sort of helping them get started. Lots of reassuring, providing space and love, encouraging words. So it sounds like there's a lot of really positive responses to when children are struggling in this room. We're going to talk, when we talk about, sorry, one more, what do you need? So yes, so really asking the child what's happening for them and asking them what they need. And then it seems like also providing some support. So we're going to talk about growth mindset as it relates to something called a fixed mindset. So a fixed mindset, a child, or it could also be an adult, because this work is actually very meaningful for adults as well. If you have a fixed mindset, you will often think that I'm either good at something or I'm bad at something, right? I either have intelligence and talent to do something, or I'm just actually bad at it. Like, I'm really good at piano and I'm really bad at playing soccer. It's just black and white. Usually, someone with a fixed mindset might avoid a challenge. because they just believe they can't do it, and they might give up easily if they're faced with difficulty. Someone with a growth mindset really believes that they can improve with effort. So even if they're not necessarily good at something yet, they can improve if they put the right amount of effort and maybe some strategies into it. They are more likely to embrace challenge and really see mistakes not as failures, but as feedback, opportunities for growth, opportunities to learn something new. So, just curious from you, if we were to respond, let's say, for example, our child brought home a spelling test and they got 100% on the spelling test. Which of these do you think encourages a growth mindset? So, saying to your child, "Oh, you're so smart," or "You worked really hard on that test." If we were to think about our words as parents, what do you think, you can put one or two in the chat, encourages a growth mindset? Okay, so we have a two. So again, you can put one or two in the chat. Two. Two? Okay, we have lots of twos. I agree. Um, and the reason why is because when we respond to a child who brings home or does something great with "You're so smart," it means that the reason they got that grade is because they have intelligence, right? It's like, "You're so smart, so you got this great grade," as opposed to really focusing on what effort and strategies it took to get a great grade on their test. So, yes, number two is the statement that I was believing also lent itself to a growth mindset. And so we know that it's good for kids to work through challenges. We know that it's good that we don't want them to give up too easily on things. We want them to persevere. And so those are all feel good things, but there's actual research that tells us that these skills are really important for life outcomes. So there's a researcher, and we're going to watch a video by her in a moment, named Carol Dweck. And Carol Dweck she's a social scientist, a researcher, a professor, and she's done a ton of research and has found that kids with growth mindsets and believe their intelligence can grow, they will choose harder tasks, they will show more persistence and perseverance, and they're more able to bounce back after failure. A child who believes that their intelligence is fixed might avoid challenge, not might, actually shows through research, they avoid challenge more, they give up more quickly, and that they see effort as a sign of weakness. And we're going to hear from Carol Dweck in just a moment. So, in this video, she really shares with us some of the research that she finds as to the benefits of having a growth mindset. So and again, some of you I think may have been in sessions with us prior. And so if you've seen this video before, I apologize for the repeat. It's just the best possible video I can find on growth mindset. So let's hear what Carol Dweck has to say. She is like the godmother of all things growth mindset.
The power of yet. I heard about a high school in Chicago where students had to pass a certain number of courses to graduate. And if they didn't pass a course, they got the grade "not yet." And I thought that was fantastic because if you get a failing grade, you think, "I'm nothing, I'm nowhere." But if you get the grade "not yet," you understand that you're on a learning curve. It gives you a path into the future. "Not yet" also gave me insight into a critical event early in my career, a real turning point. I wanted to see how children coped with challenge and difficulty. So I gave 10-year-olds problems that were slightly too hard for them. Some of them reacted in a shockingly positive way. They said things, they said things like, "I love a challenge," or, "I was hoping this would be informative." They understood that their abilities could be developed. They had what I call a growth mindset. But other students felt it was tragic, catastrophic. From their more fixed mindset perspective, their intelligence had been up for judgment and they failed. Instead of luxuriating in the power of yet, they were gripped in the tyranny of now. So, what did they do next? I'll tell you what they do next. In one study, they told us they would probably cheat the next time instead of studying more if they failed a test. In another study, after a failure, they looked for someone who did worse than they did so they could feel really good about themselves. And in study after study, they have run from difficulty. Scientists measured the electrical activity from the brain as students confronted an error. On the left, you see the fixed mindset students. There's hardly any activity. They run from the error. They don't engage with it. But on the right, you have the students with the growth mindset, the idea that abilities can be developed. They engage deeply. Their brain is on fire with yet. They engage deeply. They process the error. They learn from it and they correct it. How are we raising our children? Are we raising them for now instead of yet? Are we raising kids who are obsessed with getting A's? Are we raising kids who don't know how to dream big dreams? Their biggest goal is getting the next A, or the next test score? And are they carrying this need for constant validation with them into their future lives? Maybe because employers are coming to me and saying, we have already raised a generation of young workers who can't get through the day without an award. So,
Okay. So in a few moments, Erin is actually going to tell us what we can do to encourage our kids to have a growth mindset. But just curious if there's any reactions to the video of Carol Dweck talking about growth mindset. Is there anything that stood out or anything that challenged your thinking? I personally always respond really well to the example of the brain activity and showing how children who have a growth mindset, their brains light up when they're faced with a challenge or an error, whereas children with a fixed mindset, the energy in their brain remains constant. So I always find that to be very interesting. But any reactions to Carol Dweck's video? Oh, and you can put your thoughts into the chat box. Be great to hear. Oh, okay. I want to listen to a podcast about this. Some of it is shifting the words we use. Sometimes I can think off the cuff. I need language. I'm so glad you asked for a podcast because we have tons of podcast recommendations for you that we'll get to at the end of our presentation under resources. And Erin in a few moments is also going to help you with developing some language that you could use so that you can always encourage a growth mindset. Oh, you're welcome. Okay, so let's keep moving forward. So just thinking about a child who has a fixed mindset. Let's say you have a child who doesn't really love challenges. They think that they're either good or bad at something. What might they say to themselves with their fixed mindset? And you can put your thoughts into the chat box. What does a child with a fixed mindset say to themselves? Yes, exactly. I can't do this. Anybody else have any ideas? This is impossible. I can never get there. Lots of frustration, lots of crying, especially a child who may also be struggling with language. It comes out in their behavior. Others are better than me. Yep, absolutely. Comparing themselves to others, shutting down. I give up. Yep, all of these sound very, very, very similar to children. And I think the thing that's interesting, it's so hard. I think the thing that's interesting is when I think about this work is like, I think about how much this is so supportive of kids. And if we can work with kids in this way, how much they will develop. And really how much of a fixed mindset that I personally have as an adult in some areas. And so there are things that I say to myself that are very similar to things that kids say to themselves. So it's interesting to kind of reflect on this as an adult too. Um, oh, interesting. May show up as maladaptive behavior when it's just a cry for help. Absolutely. Yep. That's such a smart thing to say. Borrowing worry from the future and not taking baby steps. So really not giving it that try that they need to get to the place that they want to get to. Absolutely. Thank you all for your responses. We're just going to ask you another quick question and then I'm going to hand it over to Erin. So we just talked a lot about what it looks like when a child says things to themselves with a fixed mindset. But think of a child who has a growth mindset. What do they say to themselves? Or what is their behavior? What are some of their actions? I've got this. They take deep breaths before they try. Absolutely. I can do this. They may ask questions. Absolutely. They may sort of try to figure out what they can do to support themselves. Mistakes help me learn. They ask for help. Definitely. All of these are really on point of kids who have growth mindset, what they say to themselves. So the question is, how do we continue to support children who have growth mindset? And how do we take those kids who have a fixed mindset and really help them to expand their mindsets into a growth mindset? And so Erin is going to share with us some strategies to do that. So Erin, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Thank you, Erica. So when we ask ourselves as the grown-up in the room, what can we do? These are some ways and strategies that you can engage with your children and your students to support them along their continuum of growth.
Sorry, Erin, give me one sec. Okay.
Okay. So we want to make sure that we're normalizing struggle. For many of us, we are able to adapt to that hard space as grown-ups, but our children are still learning how to do that. So these are some of the ways in which you may hear your learner or your child show up still with that fixed mindset. And this is how you could possibly help them shift how they're approaching the hard spaces. This is the part where your brain is growing, making sure that you're speaking that internal dialogue over them so they can understand how to shift their thinking and their approach. You might even say, "Oh, you haven't figured it out." That power of yet, using that allows them to also adapt to that word, making it not just black and white, but giving them color and possibility to move forward over time. This feels hard because it is hard. Validating how they're feeling is so important, and saying that it's okay. Because oftentimes it's that love, that connection, that understanding, and appreciation for who they are that they are afraid of losing when they're in that hard moment. So these are ways in which you can meet them just by your words of giving them that power to move on and normalizing the struggle. So if you have a child, one of your children in your home or your classroom, and the words are, "This is too hard," I would love to hear you share out. You can put a one, two, or three, thinking about what you could say to them. One, validate their feelings. Two, keep their child engaged. And three, reinforce growth. Those are the three things you could say. Which one would you start with? I'm just curious to know because I feel like many of us on this call have an entry point in this work. And so, first approach to meeting a child and normalizing struggle. Okay, thank you, Rachel. I usually say, "I hear you. That's hard. Okay, thank you, Alexis. Validating feelings. Anyone else? Well, it's very important. It's okay to feel that way. Yes, that validation is very, very important. You seem like you're struggling. It's very challenging in our generation because most of us didn't have that as children. Oh, that's a good call out. And I think, Rachel, to speak to that for a moment, that is what's hard for us as grown-ups, is that we may be doing life differently through the eyes of our children that we're around. So leaving our fixed mindset behind us and moving forward with a growth mindset. And Hazel said, I normally say, let me know how mommy can help. That supportive love and those words are always great for that normalizing struggle. Thank you, Hazel, for sharing. Okay, Erica. So, in the shift of the mindset, because we are moving from fixed mindset to growth mindset, these are some of the questions that you could be asking. What could you try next? Prompting them to think about what their next steps are. They may be feeling like they're stuck in that hard moment. And so, to get them out of that hard, fixed mindset, thinking in the future, how can I change from where I am right now? You could ask them, what have you tried so far? So, giving them some ideas of what has worked, what hasn't worked, and how can you move forward? And then thinking outside of the box. How could you help? Who could help you? So, not just yourself, but a grown up. Can mommy help you? Like Hazel said. Could daddy help you? Could sister help you? Calling out the grown ups in the room to help them through what feels like it's impossible to do. And for them to be able to identify that it always doesn't have to be done by just themselves, that everyone is here to help. So when you think about offering choices, you want to make sure that the learner, your children, they feel like they're still in the driver's seat, right? That's part of the beauty of a child, that they love experiencing life and I want to do it. For your youngers, for your olders, independence drives them to feel successful in most cases. So offering choices is a great way to help them transition from a fixed mindset to a growth mindset. Asking questions like, do you want to try one more problem or take a quick break first? Or you could say, should we do this together or independently? I think when it comes to choices, as a grown up, making sure the choices that you're offering are also obtainable for both you and your child. Rachel also added, getting down at their level helps too. So we don't physically stand over them. Speak like a detective and come from a place of curiosity and make it playful. That's excellent insight, Rachel. I agree with all of those strategies 100%. As a leader in a school, that is one of my approaches that I use with my teachers when they're trying to help students problem solve. So you want them to know that you're there to help. So how can you show with your body that you're there to help and not hurt? And so getting down on their level, making sure that you're entering the space with curiosity and not judgment, and always support and love. Thank you for that. Now, in addition to being supportive and offering choice, praise, effort, and strategy is another way to support your children and not focusing on the talent. So, research shows that praising intelligence can reduce persistence. So, instead of saying, you're so smart, think about using some of these statements. Your strategy worked. You kept trying different approaches. You didn't give up when it got hard. I actually used that last one with my daughter this morning at drop off. Yesterday, she was met with a very challenging moment, and her teacher's appreciation at the end of the day was that she pushed through during that moment, where in the past she has given up. And it has brought us tears and complete shutdown. And it's hard to unpack that when they get into that fixed mindset. And so this morning we talked about how she didn't give up, even when it got hard, and how I was so impressed and really looking forward to another moment in her day where she could try and do it again. And so she skipped off down the sidewalk, and it made me feel like she was also feeling like she was more than excited to try again and empowered to fail and fall forward. So thinking about having each moment being a learning experience, especially for our littles, and that's important. So getting away from the "you're so smart" to thinking more about pouring into their cups to support them moving forward. Now, I think it was Rachel who said earlier, we came or grew up in homes and communities where fixed mindset was the norm. And so now we have to think about these common traps that we exist in. So, as grown-ups supporting our learners with their growth mindset, be aware of your overpraising. I love you so much because you're great. You're so smart. You're doing everything 100% correctly. That right there is setting them up for success in a very negative way. And so just checking our words and checking our mouths to make sure that that overpraising isn't happening. Also, rescuing too quickly.
That was me.
Oh, okay. Thanks, Erica.
Alexis may have also said it, but that was my example in the beginning that I do
Okay.
that way too much.
And that's easy to do that as a parent. You don't want to see your child get hurt, cry, feel uncomfortable or sad, and you want to take them out of that space. But it's also important for us to remind ourselves. Thank you, Rachel. Yes, we're all guilty of that, right? We love our kids hard, but understanding that that's part of childhood, that's part of development. So we have to give that part of that experience to them 100%. Let them fail and fall forward. Let them learn from their experiences. And when you get ready to step in, it's almost like that season of wait. Take one step back and count to 10. That's what I really try to do in our home because oftentimes I'm too quick to engage. And so I've learned how to close my mouth when I want to start talking and count to 10 and then engage with curiosity. Alexa said, I used to see that happen a lot when I worked with kids. Yes. And it's frustrating when you're on the outside watching what's happening on the inside. And it's even more challenging when you're on the inside doing it, right? So, thinking again about the common traps, toxic positivity, going around with the mindset, everything is great. Don't worry about it. It's great. It's fine. That's awesome. In reality, everything is not great. And that's okay. It's not supposed to be because childhood is all about learning and learning is all about making mistakes. And so, one of the books that we will highlight in a bit actually speaks to exactly that. So, a little bit of reflection for us here. What might you be unintentionally reducing resilience? So, where does that happen? If you think about in your words, how you show up and interact with your children, maybe it's your behaviors, but where might you be unintentionally reducing resilience? I do a lot of repair, says Rachel. Erica says I rescue my kids too much from discomfort. Alex, at home. Mm, thank you. I think this is a great place to start after we leave this session when you think about how you're going to shift what you're doing with your child or children. Answering this question in a very quiet space and with a true look in the mirror. Like, what might you be doing that is reducing the resilience of your child or children? Alex also added, or out in public places. Yeah, that sense of embarrassment, right? That judgment from other grown-ups. Parenting is hard. And being a parent that fosters growth mindset in home and in your children is even harder. So that's real talk, Alex. Thank you. Rachel added, figuring out the balance of when to encourage and when just to be. My mother used to tell me in my first and second year of being a parent, this isn't about you, Erin. Like, you've lived your life as a child. This is about your children. And so being comfortable with that season of discomfort and when to know when to just let it be is really a delicate space, because you have to figure out when to step in and also when to step out. But fostering that growth mindset is a place where once you step in and guide, you are shifting the way they think, the way they approach, the way they understand. And then you can step out, because then they will be able to move forward with their development without you in that way, right? Building their own narrative after they have you to scaffold what they should be doing to have a more positive outlook on their growth and progress. Alex says there is also a bit of a push and pull when working with other people's kids, and how the parent interact with them, yep, might be different than what you do. Yes, Alex. And that is also why the home to school connection is very important. So, as parents, if you are working extremely hard on building the growth mindset of your child or children, I encourage you to work just as hard to communicate that with your educational team. So, if your child leaves you for a period of the day or the week, and someone else is grounding them in their educational development, there is that communication needs to be a clear communication of goals that you have for home, and also to ask them to engage in some of those goals at school. We can agree that our kids show up differently, right? They
And
show
the
up
other thing I wanted to share is sometimes as a teacher, I also found it to be very like frustrating when I was working with a group of kids and like encouraging a growth mindset. And then a parent would just swoop. I don't know if this is what Alexis was sharing. And then a parent would just swoop in and just sort of like ruin the whole thing by saving, by saving the
yes,
child. And so sometimes with our own kids, it could be so hard to practice this. But when we see other kids, we're just like, oh yeah, this is the right way to do it, right? We want to let them struggle. We want to let them work through challenge. So it's hard sometimes when you're working so hard, and you know this as an educator, and then parents will just kind of swoop in and just, I don't know, not ruin the moment, but they'll kind of take away from all the work that you've done because they're so, feeling that need to fix. And Rachel wrote something in the chat. 100% is a skill, and everyone on the team needs to keep you, not for everyone. Yep. This is a mind shift for everyone. Absolutely.
definitely a skill you learn over time.
Yeah.
Practice makes progress, not perfect, as many of our parents probably told us.
All right. Should I move the slide
Move
forward?
on.
Okay.
Yes, thank you. So let's look at a few scenarios. So here's scenario one. Your child feels down about themselves after receiving a few bad grades in math. She says, I'm no good at math. What could you say? How could you approach this? Thinking about the validation of the feeling, keeping the child engaged, and reinforcing the growth. What might be how you, some words and how you would actually address or respond to her statement, I'm no good at math? And we can put in some of our responses in the chat, thinking about those three approaches for growth mindset. As everyone's typing, oh, thank you, Alexis. Can you tell me more about why you feel that way about math? Yes, Erica, sounds like you're feeling frustrated. Looks at your test. Let's look at your test together. Yes, doing it with them to go over it. That's so important. I know you can improve with some different study strategies. Our math specialist always breaks it down to exactly that, Erica. So you're feeling that way. But let's actually look at why you're feeling that way. What part of this makes you feel like you're not good at math? What's the hard part? And where do you also feel like is your razzle dazzle, the part that comes easier to you in math? Because you want them to have that experience where they know they can do some of it, but they may not be able to do all of it just yet. Thank you. All right, feel free to respond to scenario 1, but we want to be cognizant of time and move on to scenario 2.
Oh,
Give them
there's
an
a great,
example.
yeah, great example. I was just going to say, go ahead.
Yep. Give them an example in which they have overcome a struggle or challenge in the past. Yes, that's right. Reminding them of their greatness, right? You have done it before and you can do it again. And there is still that time for improvement. Yes, we're all learning together. Thank you for those responses. So, in thinking about scenario 2, your child wants to quit soccer team because they think everyone else is better than them. So he says, everyone is better than me. I can't play soccer. What could you say? Thinking about validating the feelings once again, keeping the child engaged, and reinforcing growth. There is this underlining understanding of what happens when you shift from the educational platform, math, reading, spelling, science, to the athletic platform. And I have had many conversations with families in our school community where their child has tried a sport once or twice and they want to give up. And the parent says, I know that they can do it, but how do I get them to go back for another time? And so I have been sharing with them, keeping them engaged. Just because a child says this is hard right now, as an adult responding to that and saying, okay, you're done, really gives them that fixed mindset experience. And the trying doesn't happen. And that is where we really need to focus on giving them that opportunity to try again. So Erica says, sounds like you're feeling discouraged. I've noticed a lot of growth in your soccer playing. What do you think would help? Hazel says, my daughter, for example, plays basketball and she is struggling to shoot the ball, but is really a good defender. So remind her of her importance of defense in basketball and how her role is important to their team. Thank you, Hazel.
That really reminds me, Erin, too, of what who said, oh, hope I'm pronouncing this right. Senyada said is just when they give them an example of when they've overcome a challenge in the past, like, and you had mentioned focusing on those strengths. I think that that's such a great idea.
Mm-hmm. Jane, thank you. This is a tricky one for me because I recently let my kid drop out of baseball, excuse me, because she was so overwhelmed by the sensory input. Yes. And I think, Jane, there's also the capacity of your child, right? Knowing your child's profile. And when we think about our children and all the complexities of their brains and their bodies, there's also their ability piece, right? And so if the sensory input was too much, then thinking about a different space where she could continue to play baseball, but maybe not at the rec, right? If that truly is a passion of hers, and that was the reason why she was feeling overwhelmed. If she wants to engage and that growth mindset of, I still want to do this, but not in this space, then being able to bring that experience into her possibility. Or thinking about next steps. Maybe if we wear headphones, right? Or if we try it outdoors or indoors, or play with like a few friends instead of 25 children, that can also feel much better. You're welcome. For Jane, also give yourself grace because I'm trying to read between the lines, right? We're texting that parenting is hard, like I said before, and there's no right and wrong. And so time will tell, but also having an honest narrative with your daughter is a great next step.
That's great advice. All right, Erin, before we get to the maybe we'll do resources first, and
Okay,
then we'll come back to a Q&A, just because I want to make sure we get to the resources. Did you want
sure.
to share what you wrote down? Yeah.
Sure.
Okay.
I would love to be able to share. This is a short list for some resources that if we had all day to speak to you, we would be able to include quotes and snippets from each one of these resources. But for those that like to do a little bit more of a deeper dig after their sessions with us, here are a few books to get you working with your child and their growth mindset. So the book, The Mindset, The New Psychology of Success, that is a great place to start to help you as a grown-up have some more meat, some nuggets of what to do next and how to approach it. So shifting you as a grown-up from a fixed mindset to a growth mindset. One of my hands down first reads for new teachers is The Whole Brain Child. And so learning more about the child and all of the complexities so that you know exactly why and how you are experiencing what you're experiencing. 30 million words, filling your cups up to give you what you need to engage with just the right words. When you feel stuck and frustrated as a parent, the book How to Talk So Little Kids Will Listen is a great resource. The Gift of Failure, normalizing failure and thinking about the word not yet instead of no. How to raise an adult. The day to day of having a small child is very long and tedious. And thinking about the future of when they grow up to be an adult, what do you have to do now to get them to that place later on in life? And that book is really a great resource to walk you through those hard days. Grit, this is just for life. I think every parent and non parent should read this book, The Power of Passion and Perseverance. Ish is a very sweet book that oftentimes is a read aloud in our first couple of months in both kindergarten and first year. So if you have littles in the ages of 3 through 7, this is a great book to read with your child or children. And the book that I was referring to a little bit earlier in our presentation, Your Fantastic Elastic Brain, that is a great place to start if you haven't had a real look into growth mindset with your child. Getting that book to share it with them is a great place for them to see how their brains work. And then Failing at Fairness. And that is geared more towards the adult to help to support the choices that you make in your home with your littles. For those of us that like words to be spoken to us instead of our eyes reading them on paper, podcasts are a great way to engage with this learning as well. So, Big Life Journal podcast is a great resource. Raising Humans Well, the Mind Shift podcast, Unruffled, Good Inside with Dr. Becky Kennedy is one of my favorites, and The Longest Shortest Time. So I hope that you can find one or two resources here that can help support you and your child on your journey to a growth mindset. And then I highly suggest trying one or two more.
Erin, I also want to share that this presentation will be shared with everybody who's in this, who signed up for this webinar. So you'll get this full list in your email inboxes, pretty soon. So no need to write them down. All right. So I think that's fantastic, Erin, and all of your resources are so wonderful and vetted. I love that you included a little anecdote next to each one, but we just wanted to end this session with any kind of questions that you may want to ask, any final comments that you want to make sure that we hear, but we'll stay on for a couple of minutes. Alexis just shared a couple of things in the chat, which we want you to know about a survey link. So we'd love to know how this resonated with you today. And then she also put in the next upcoming event, which is all about digital well-being, and that's on June 17th at 3:30. So those are two great resources for you. But any other questions that for Erin or myself that we can answer while we're here together? All right. If there's not, we would love to just know something new that you might try with a child who's struggling, and or just anything else that you got from this webinar. Oh, thank you, Rachel. That's such fantastic feedback. Make sure you put that on the survey link, because that's something that we can share with other folks too, that making sure that a lot of people are getting this information, because we agree it's so valuable. But that was really nice. And so if there's no questions and you're open to sharing something new you might try, we'll just say that this was the end of our growth mindset presentation. We hope you got something out of it that you could just take with you right now and apply right away. And yes, Alexis, thank you for thanking everyone. Thank you so much for your participation. This was such a lively group today. It's so fun for me and Erin to have a group that's so that participates so much, because it makes our work so much better. Oh, wait, hold on. We have a question, Erin. I'll read it out loud. I don't know if I'm alone in this, but because of her pretty keen gauge for authenticity, my daughter will sometimes automatically reject positive affirmations or anything that reads as therapy speak. How to be authentic and still change the way I talk to her about this. So it's such a great point. It's like how to strike that note of authenticity.
If you have a journal, one of our middle school families, it is a great starting point for the parent and the child to begin dialogue through a journal. And so being able to engage with her and build a growth mindset and fill her up with positive affirmations through journal writing has been really helpful. So writing a note to her, asking her questions about what felt hard, being able to speak life over her, building that growth mindset and resiliency, and then engaging with what felt hard. Right? It's a different type of authenticity, but then it gives you a resource that you've created together to go back and help dialogue when you have those conversations.
It's a great idea.
You're welcome.
Yeah. It is so hard. That's such a great question, though, the balance of being positive and making sure we're seeing things through a positive angle, but also being really authentic. It's especially as kids get older and become tweens and teens, they can sniff inauthenticity a mile away. And so it gets even harder. But yeah, Jane, that's such a real question. Thank you for asking that. And that was a great response, Erin. Interesting, Senaida. The importance of making them part of the process for me is key. Yeah. So including them in your work, including them in your process is something that really helps. I think that that's such a great point. So it's not just like the parent acting alone and the child acting alone. It's really a collaborative process that's coming. We're figuring this out together. That's such a great point too.